But meanwhile, the Cavaliers picked up where they left off. They kept the magic rolling in the land last night with their new rings, crushing the Knicks 117-88. LeBron James started the season off with a bang, a triple-double with 19 points, 11 rebounds, and 14 assists in the win. Stephen A., did the Cavs prove they are the best team in the association?
No, they didn't, because they were playing against the Knicks, which means they didn't receive a real test. We don't know. The New York Knicks, with their starting five, played decent enough basketball, particularly in the first half. But then in the second half, they didn't show up. They have no bench to speak of, and we all need to be thinking about Phil Jackson and when it's going to be time for him to get to L.A., because clearly he doesn't seem as interested as he should be in building an actual team here in New York City. Bottom line is that the Cleveland Cavaliers were head and shoulders above. Kyrie Irving went ballistic in the third quarter, put on an absolute show. The tandem of him and LeBron James shows why they're the champions and why they should be the favorites in the Eastern Conference. But whether or not they've proven they're the best, you have to go through a real test before we're willing to say that. And there's no way on earth that I can say that, because unfortunately the New York Knicks didn't provide the kind of exam needed to gauge such a proclamation.
The Cavs proved they were the best team in the NBA by winning the championship last year. That's when they proved it. And there's been very little turnover on the team. Look, I know Della Vedova, he's the scrappy guy and everything. They really needed him when they didn't have Kyrie Irving or Kevin Love in the finals 2 years ago. Not as much did they need him in last finals, considering what was available to them. And obviously Mozgov, that's, you know, in a certain way similar to Bogut in the sense that he's a big body and he can act as a rim protector, and he's nimble for a big man and all that stuff. So they missed those pieces, but there's no real huge turnover by the standards of most rosters, especially after you win a championship, trying to hold on to everything. You're going to bring in some draft picks. There wasn't huge turnover. So this is basically the same team we saw just win the championship. And as of now, until the Warriors really get rolling, the Cavs are clearly going to be the best team in the NBA. And, you know, you got to give credit to the Spurs, although I think the Spurs in recent postseasons, because they've been out-athleted by other teams, are kind of, you know, put to the side until they prove otherwise. The Cavs once again show why they're the best. They're a cohesive unit. They have continuity from last year. And Stephen A., they have two great players and a couple other pretty good ones.
Here's my problem with your position. You're not resolute, because you're going to be dancing all year if you continue on this path. You've been very, very clear about how the Golden State Warriors are the favorites. Then you start out talking about how they're not better than they were last year, and last night proved that. Now you're coming with the Cavs and you're talking about how they're the best team for now because they proved it last June. And oh, by the way, here they are again, having played last night, but at the same time, you're not picking them to win the championship. Based on what you're telling me, how can I pin Max Kellerman down definitively as we look at this NBA season? Because I want to make sure I'm clear about what you're saying. You're saying Golden State is going to go to the finals against the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Correct.
And you're saying Golden State is going to win, correct?
Correct. But early in the season, Cleveland will look better than Golden State because of the continuity issue, which Cleveland has. And also, to the Knicks' point, the reason I've been saying to people like you, and in fact you on this show, that the Knicks ain't making no conference finals, is the bench. They don't have a bench.
You did say that.
I mean, and then Joe Kim.
You did say that,
Yep.
but I never refuted that. But see, the problem is you think I refuted that. I never did. What I said was that starting five, with the big if as it pertains to their health, is good enough against the marginal teams for them to have a respectable record and ultimately get there. It wasn't to bloviate about the Knicks. It was an indictment against the rest of the Eastern Conference. Because when you look at everyone outside of Cleveland, who can you definitively say is you can pencil them in as money? You don't know. Boston is too young, and I'm not that high on the Al Horford acquisition. Indiana's got a new point guard. Indiana, I understand that. But again, I'm thinking about Melo, too. And I think about the standpoint, there have been times. I remember times when Jordan was playing. And I looked at Chicago, and I thought that there were teams better than Chicago. They just didn't have MJ. And I look at certain teams in the East, not Cleveland, of course, but I look at other guys, and I say to myself, all right, what if Melo went ballistic? Could they beat those teams?
But
I think they could.
We've been arguing about this. That's the problem. You and others will overrate Melo and say, since they have Melo, that gives them a good chance. Then they don't do it, as they never do. And Melo is not one of the 5 or probably 10 best players in the league. And then those same people, including you, will say, well, because he doesn't have a team around him. See, if Melo needs to be traded, maybe Melo isn't as good as you think he is.
Whoa. First of all, I'll give you credit for this. You have been resolute about Melo. That bravo to you. It's a rarity. But the reality is simple. When you talk about Carmelo Anthony, understand something. You and I are on opposite ends of the spectrum as it pertains to him. But when I'm talking about the New York Knicks, I'm also talking about the rest of the Eastern Conference outside of Cleveland.
Toronto?
I don't have a lot of faith in those guys. Even Toronto.
They're better than the
last
Knicks.
year. I think, well, Dwayne Casey's a hell of a coach. Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan can really play. But Bismarck Biyombo being gone, I think, relatively hurts them. Valanciunas, we'll see what he does this year. I look at things like that. I'm looking at Jeff Teague in Indiana, which is why when they asked me the question, I specifically stated that Indiana's a possibility to go up against Cleveland. And I mentioned Toronto. I said the Knicks had an outside shot, and I wouldn't completely dismiss them. But under no circumstances did I label them as the team that would definitively meet Cleveland, because I know the Achilles that plagues this franchise. And I get all of that. All I'm saying is, at the end of the day, where the dichotomy exists between you and I, is that I firmly have more belief in Melo than you do.
Yes, you do. As a matter of, well, we can talk about the Knicks another time, because this can go on and on. But I got some more bombshells for you on the Knicks as this season goes on, Stephen A.
Yeah, well, they ain't going to be bombshells, because bombshells implies that it's something about them that I don't know and won't find out until you tell me. And I assure you, there ain't a damn thing you can tell me about the Knicks that I don't already know.
Oh,
this is going to be fun.
We'll leave it there. It is going to be fun, and it's still early. Plenty more First Take coming up. We stay in Believe Land. The World Series kicked off last night with a big win for the Indians, leading the Cleveland Police Department to troll the Cubs on Twitter. They filed a missing persons report for the Cubs offense. Hashtag rally together. Goose egg, go Tribe. That is so wrong. We discuss if Cubs fans should be in panic mode. That is next. World Series Game 1 is in the books, and the Cubs didn't get on the board with a 6-0 loss to the Indians, and Corey Kluber had 9 strikeouts over 6 innings. The Cubs struck out a total of 15 times in the game, as they're now trailing 1-0 in the series. History not on Chicago's side either. Listen to this. The winner of Game 1 has won 6 straight World Series and 24 of the past 28. Not a great sign for those Cubs. So, Max, I start with you here. Is it times for those Cubs fans to panic?
No, not yet, but it's hilarious that they will.
What's wrong with you?
Yes, I'm anti-Cub fan, as a matter of fact. I can't
Stop
take it anymore.
it.
Oh, it's so
the curse.
It's so sickening, Stephen A. It's like the Red Sox fans in '04, and then the whole country gets behind them because of the curse, and it's been so long. Oh, I hope they lose. That's right, Cubs fans. I hope you lose. I'm rooting for Cleveland. That said, the panic can come when you see a stat like you lose Game 1 in a best-of-7, and the last 24 teams to win Game 1 have gone on to win the series. Oh, excuse me, 24 out of 28 teams have won the World Series when they win Game 1. And so you look at that and you go, man, that All-Star game is too influential. Look at that. You got to start it in Cleveland because of some stupid All-Star game. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But I'm here to tell you, I don't care if that game was played in Chicago, in Cleveland, or on the moon. It was likely Cleveland was going to win that game. They had the pitching matchup, and they have Andrew Miller coming out of the bullpen after a legitimate ace starts the game. So he can come into a game with the bases loaded and it's still tight in a very high leverage situation and be properly used the way your best relief pitcher should be used. Not in the 9th inning with no one out, no one on, and a 2 or a 3-run lead. The stupid way most Major League bullpens have been used since Tony La Russa did that with Eckersley. But the smart way bullpens used to be used. High leverage moment, bases loaded, close game. We need to get an out now. Bring in Andrew Miller, who's been absolutely lights out in that situation this entire postseason. But now you go to Game 2, and the pitching matchups, back until you get to the Cleveland ace again, favor the Cubs, and not by a little bit. I know Arrieta wasn't great in the second half, But between him and Bauer, I'll take Arrieta all day. I think the Cubs even it up, and Cubs fans should calm down. But I'm glad they're panicking now.
Well, first of all, that last comment was not necessary. I mean, what emotional investment do you have? You're supposed to be a New Yorker and a Yankee fan. What the hell are you worried about how they're feeling for? They haven't won a World Series in 108 years. Give them a break. Give them a break. Stop messing with them. Here's what I would say to you.
Cubs stuff.
Bottom line is this. I'm still going to roll with the Cubs because I'm not going to change my pick like some people I know. But I will tell you that I am concerned. And if I were them, I would be worried. Panic would be a bit too extreme, but I would be worried. Here's why. This ain't the first time they've been shut out in this postseason. They were shut out a couple of times against the Dodgers. And then when you look at the Indians, who are boasting an ERA of less than 2 throughout this postseason, against the Red Sox, against the Blue Jays, and now the Cubs, where 96 batters have been struck out. I mean, that's just not something that you can ignore. I'm looking at them right now, and I'm saying these boys are legit. They ain't playing games. They going out there and they're handling their business. And if you're the Cubs, you've got to wonder how much longer can you continue to dance against destiny in a sense, or ride destiny's wave. At some point in time, you have to handle your own business the way they did, particularly in games 5 and 6 of that NLCS series against the Dodgers. Bryant's got to step up. Montero's got to step up. Rizzo's got to step up. All of these guys got to step up. And Schwarber, even though he came back after only being out since Game 3 of the regular season, coming in there and smacking a double, that was a big-time strikeout he suffered from at the hands of Andrew Miller, and I think it was in the 8th inning. So I'm looking at them right now, and I'm saying when your bats, usually in a World Series, you come in with momentum, or even if you don't have it, you build it and you build off of it. What's concerning me about the Cubs is that they seem to be this roller coaster ride. That's not going to work against the Indians. The Indians are loaded. They have some starting pitching, but they really have a strong bullpen. And when you take that into consideration and the way that they play defense and the way that somehow, some way they usually were able to manufacture runs, even though that wasn't the case last night because Ricardo Perez just showed up and handled his business with 4 RBIs, you've got to be consistent. And speaking of Perez, we got to give him credit. Because the game that he called behind the plate, Kluber gave him a lot of credit as well. He should. This dude seems to know all the tricks of the trades and what the batters are looking for. He seems to really do his homework when it comes to those guys coming up at the plate against his pitchers. And he knows what to do. And Kluber gave him all the credit in the world because he said the only time I messed up is when I didn't execute when he asked me to. So you've got a catcher, and I don't underestimate catchers at all, man, because catchers call the games behind the plate. They control those pitches. They make sure that they're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. And right now, Perez seems to be flowing and rolling at the most opportune time. So that's just more things that works against the Chicago Cubs. And I hope they step up and handle their business. But I'm getting a little bit worried for them.
Not to mention he smacked a couple home runs. Not that many catchers have ever done that. And the list is very impressive of the handful that have. And now he's on that list.
Correct.
In the postseason, it's pitching and defense. All those things that you heard if you were a kid growing up or if you're a kid now and somehow you still like baseball, which, it's been widely reported is an aging sport in terms of fan interest. So most of the people are really into baseball a little bit older. And as kids, we always heard it's pitching and defense in the postseason. And I always thought, come on, why would it be pitching? If it's also hitting in the regular season, what changes in the postseason? But this has been studied, and the conclusion is it is, in fact, pitching and defense in the postseason. When you look at how much of an influence, how correlated offense, scoring runs is, or a high-powered offense is to winning the World Series, the answer is not very. So the Cubs offense, Stephen A., that you're hoping to come alive, it's usually not what happens in the postseason. They're going to have to pitch. Now, their bullpen isn't the Cleveland bullpen because they don't have a guy like Andrew Miller who they bring in high leverage moments. But a weakness, which was the end of the bullpen, has been addressed in the biggest possible way when they got Aroldis Chapman. So they have superior starting pitching in terms of the depth of the staff.
But they got to score to get a lead. They got to score to get a lead to give Chapman something to protect. And that's their problem. They're not doing that on occasion.
Well, I mean, Bauer's been blown up in this postseason a little bit, giving up a couple home runs, has not been, like, if you look at the number 2 and number 3 pitchers for Cleveland, I might take the Cleveland ace, but I'll take the 2s and the 3s from Chicago. So I think if they even this up in Game 2, you're going to feel a lot differently heading into Game 3.
You're probably right about that if that happens, but that would mean that we have to rely on Jake Arrieta to step up. And over the last 3 months, he hasn't been the Jake Arrieta we once knew and loved for the previous 16 to 18 months. That's my only concern.
Yeah, I hope the Cubs fans are concerned. I'm just
Oh
so
my
sick of
gosh,
it
Cubs fans, I'm rooting for you. Please ignore the troll to my left.
So sick of it. Oh, the Cubs, we haven't won in so long, and all the country,
Goodbye, Max.
Sweethearts.
We're going to break. Goodbye. And on a much
Cleveland.
But meanwhile, the Cavaliers picked up where they left off. They kept the magic rolling in the land last night with their new rings, crushing the Knicks 117 to 88. LeBron James started the season off with a bang, a triple-double with 19 points, 11 rebounds, and 14 assists in the win. Stephen A., did the Cavs prove they are the best team in the association?
No, they didn't, because they were playing against the Knicks, which means they didn't receive a real test. We don't know. The New York Knicks, with their starting five, played decent enough basketball, particularly in the first half. But then in the second half, they didn't show up. They have no bench to speak of, and we all need to be thinking about Phil Jackson and when it's going to be time for him to get to L.A., because clearly he doesn't seem as interested as he should be in building an actual team here.